Hi, my name is Dr. Brad Reedy. I'm one of the co-founders of Second Nature Therapeutic Programs. Today I'd like to speak to parents who are considering the difficult and important decision to send your child out of home to a wilderness therapy program. And to begin with, I'd like to explain a little bit about the theory underlying wilderness therapy. When I was in college, I attended a class on family relationships and spirituality in the homes. And one day we watched a documentary on the Mother of the Year in Utah, and it showed what she did throughout her day with her children. It was an amazing home, actually. She had all kinds of organization. She was able to teach the children academically. She was able to help them participate in physical activities. When they took their nap, she went and cleaned the house so they were ready for the second half of the day. It was quite remarkable, actually, quite impressive. So we watched that documentary one day, and then the next day we watched another documentary about a primitive tribe in Africa, quite different culturally than the Mother of the Year. And what it showed was there was a division of labor. The mothers took all of the young children and carried them with her. She fished. She stayed near the home, near the village. She took care of the village, took care of all of the home needs, if you will, while the fathers went out and hunted and gathered with the older male children. And throughout the day, as the parents were performing these activities, they would sing songs and tell stories of the legends of their religion. And woven into these stories were lessons about the struggle to survive, about how to survive. And there was really this integration, this weaving in of the struggle for surviving and the lessons that the children needed to be happy and successful in life individually and as part of the family and the community. Many of you are familiar with Abraham Maslow and his theory of self-actualization. He teaches, and I think in many cases in America, we follow this model. He teaches the idea that your basic needs of food, water, and shelter have to be taken care of first. If they're not taken care of, if you're not taken care of physically, then what is there in your ability to focus on the higher level needs like belonging and self-awareness or actualization? Well, wilderness therapy essentially believes that Maslow was fundamentally wrong. We believe that it's in the context of struggling to survive that many of the important lessons of life can be taught. We believe that when children learn to build a shelter that they sleep in, to carry everything that they need for survival on their back, to rely on the group and the community for survival, and the staff and the authority for survival, that those lessons that are not contrived, if you will, are more powerfully taught and more easily internalized by your child. One of the foremost and first theorists of wilderness therapy said, whenever we adopted what we have come to call contrived experiences, the overall impact diminished for their participants. So participating in a primitive living milieu like Second Nature bypasses resistance that's typical for the children that we deal with. The use of symbols, rituals, metaphors, experiential rites of passage, all have the ability to cement in the child and the young adult important lessons that you would like them to learn. Wilderness therapy uses the peer culture. It uses an immersion in a new language, a new culture. We use the Native American language and the Native American lessons to teach your children the same things that you want to teach them, but they're less likely to resist them. They're less likely to rebel or push them away because they're not the typical ones that they're fighting against to define themselves. One of the very first things that I learned or appreciated about wilderness therapy was how resourceful, how resilient the children and the young adults experience themselves to be. The improvement in self-esteem, the improvement in communication, because this small community that they live in, that, like I said, that they function for survival in, becomes a great microcosm for their family and for the big universe in which they have to live in. And so children come into this experience being stripped of the creature comforts, being put, if you will, in a very raw experience, both emotionally and physically, although safe and not punitive or punishing, and they end up exposing themselves. sometimes in individual outpatient therapy or in residential centers, you can still find areas of retreat, corners to hide in. Sometimes in wilderness therapy, the most powerful and illuminating parts of the treatment are the things that happen between the formal sessions, are the things that happen between a long hike or a snowstorm, or in the summertime during a lightning drill where the children are participating in safety procedures, or each day when the staff are checking their hands and feet, their level of cooperation, their ability to find appropriate levels of dependence. One powerful thing that happens in wilderness therapy that seems less contrived is the communication that happens with family. You would think in many cases that they're going to be farther away from you and they're going to be therefore not as connected to you. But the letter writing therapy that happens in wilderness therapy, the letters that we bring into the field, the letters that we post online and talk with you about, become some of the most powerful family therapy that I've ever participated in as a therapist. And so we use those letters. Sometimes we use them in individual therapy. Sometimes we use them in the group setting to create change, to provoke your child to be aware of where their life was headed and how to change and why to change. The goals of wilderness therapy are to stabilize your child, to interrupt the crisis, to give you time to make a long-term decision. Individually, we treat the child and assess the child. What are their needs? What are the criteria in therapy that are effective for them? What's working? Is it group therapy? Is it individual therapy? Is it the experiential component? Is it the mentor model that we use out in the field? Do they respond best to the family work that we're doing? The family work through letters, the family work through phone calls and visits? Or do they work best because wilderness is such a great milieu to use a very traditional behavioral model? You know, the natural and logical consequences that wilderness therapy offer are unmatched, really. It's hard to create something as powerful as your shelter falling down because you didn't take the time to listen to the staff, or you didn't take the time to build it, or your frustration tolerance was such that you gave up on following the directions for building your shelter. And so when it falls down at night, there doesn't need to be a big long lecture. The lesson is there, in your face, teaching you. And there is a bit of leverage in the wilderness. There's a softening effect, meaning that children who come in resistant and demonstrative in their behavior oftentimes soften their response to authority, to the milieu, and they're able to achieve different levels of success after second nature. So they might have needed to go to a residential treatment center before second nature, but after coming to second nature, because of the change, because of the buy-in, because of the awareness, because of the skill development, they're able to go to a more mainstream therapeutic or non-therapeutic setting after second nature and be successful.